for more than about 5 seconds to shoot around. I feel like I'm not ready. Hey, it's Joe at Red's here. Just got back from a big tarpon trip. Finally landed a super duper giant tarpon. I'm super stoked about it. I want to share a few of the tips and some stuff from that adventure. I've been on lots of tarpon fishing trips, caught lots of tarpon, but never a super jumbo jet one, and finally got that done. Okay, if you're brand new to tarpon fishing, I have a video that is linked to the video description. It's just Tarpon 101. I think that's probably a better place to start. This is not meant to be a complete video of everything you need to know about tarpon fishing. It's just going to share some tips and strategies that I came across most recently that I thought were extremely helpful. First off, when it comes to line management, so you're going to be in a boat for tarpon. It would be very rare to fish on foot for tarpon. And one of the first things you want to do in the flats boat is, I guess the very first thing you're going to do is just communicate with your guide real quick. Hey, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, so on and so forth. The other thing that I like to do is I want every angler to have a realistic expectation on distance. So let's just say we get up on the deck, we're going to cast all our line out, and we're going to establish that, okay, I have the amount of line that I can do in 2 false casts. That's just a good rule of thumb. Sometimes 1 false cast would be good, but shot a lot of line out there. I don't want any more line than that. More line, more problems, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, guide, how far was that? Guide's going to say a number that's far shorter than what you thought it was, okay? So that'll be the first thing. Now we have some type of distance, and then the guide knows how much line you have available and ready at a moment's notice. The next thing I do is whether I'm on the deck of a boat or maybe I have like a spider cage around me or a line bucket. When you stack line, okay, follow me here and understand this. If I peel the line off my reel and put it in a bucket or a stripping basket or just on the deck, the line that I need last is on top. And so now I'm trying to pull the line that I need first to shoot out. So let me explain, okay? So let me just do this. When I stack the line properly, I'm gonna take, in the running line that I'm stripping in is gonna go on my right side because I want that right under my rod as a right-hander. And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna pile this line neatly like this, and then eventually I'm going to come back like that right there. That way the line that needs to go out the rod first is either on top or it's readily available, and then the line I need last is going to be right under my shooting guide so that it can shoot up with the least resistance and hopefully make that cast, okay? If I just peel it off my reel and pile it up there, I'm asking for absolute disaster. So take a minute, establish distance, make sure you've got your line ready. This is helpful for any saltwater species, but tarpon stuff happens pretty quick. They're pretty good movers. And if you're casting a rolling tarpon, they can just pop up, and we need to make sometimes a tough cast quickly. The next thing I recommend is so this is a 12 weight rod. It can be kind of hard to load at close range. So 10s, 12s, whatever you got, can be kind of hard to load and get momentum going with that head or that line shooting out. So I say I like at least 9 feet of actual fly line out the rod, and I can manage that, and that prevents the line from falling back down through the guides. Okay, so what a disaster on the flats boat to have that. I'm gonna stop it right there, is have that line fall back through the guides. Okay, cameraman, you're gonna need to help me. See, total disaster right here in the yard too, right? It's a pretty good example. So if I have at least a rod length of line out, if I were to point my rod up, I can't have it fall back through the guides. I will generally lay my fly. It'll be wet. It'll be probably a 1/0 hook or something like that. And I'll lay my wet heavy fly on the deck, and then I will hold my leader halfway up, okay? That way when I'm ready to make my cast, I've got enough line that I can get started. And there are different ways to get started. A lot of people like a figure 8 like that, but I'm gonna throw one actual false cast and then I'm gonna dump all that line, okay? Now there's the next lesson. We should be stretching our line to make sure there's not so much memory that something like that happens. It's Memorial Day weekend in Washington State, so you know it's absolutely frigid here. It's barely short sleeve weather. The water in the Keys right now is 86 degrees. So these tropical stiff lines generally don't have so much memory that's here. But when you get there and you get out on the deck of the boat, and this is a brand new line as of like 10 minutes ago, stretch that line as you get out, you get all set up, stretch that line to make sure it's nice and straight and will shoot like an arrow when you send it out there. So stretch your line, that's another tip for the boat. Okay, so now I've established, like, okay, that cast is 11:30 right there as a right-hander. That's the easiest cast because I got my guide on the polling deck back there at 12, and I'm a strong right-hander. Okay, those are easy. Anything like 9, 10, 11, 12, 12:30 is all pretty easy to make as a right-hander. So I'm gonna stack my line again, okay? So I'm gonna neatly stack this. In a tropical environment, my line would not have that much coil and memory in it. And I'm gonna get just over rod length of line, and I'm gonna hold my leader halfway out like that right there, and I'm ready. Now, I fished with other anglers last week. I fished with dozens and dozens, if not 100 different anglers and saltwater trips that I've hosted. And one of the toughest casts where I see fish that should have been easy chip shots get away is often on that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock range, okay? So saltwater fish generally have to be coming towards you in order to get them to bite, especially big mature tarpon. They don't turn 90 degrees very cooperatively to come get your fly. Your fly really needs to be retrieved in their natural path of migration. So we want the fish coming at us, which is why that's 4, 5, and 6 o'clock shots. Generally, by the time you see them and they're coming behind you, a lot of times I'm not going to be able to get a cast back out to them like that works. So we want to keep our eye on the back door. It definitely happens, but where I see shots get squandered is the boat's being pulled or we're looking out this way and a shot comes up at 2 o'clock and the captain says, hey, we need to make a 2 o'clock 60-foot shot. You know, I've got a wad of fish coming at us. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, big water fish. And he'll always say something like, oh, that one in the front is big. And then you're like, you lose your mind, okay? Now, that's where I watch people fail a lot is, one, they either cast like this, a right-hander, and they try to cast and they snag the guide on the polling deck. And the guides, if it's high stakes, they want you just get it done one way or another. You're not gonna, they'd rather get close to being hooked or get hooked having you at least try than to fail to make a cast. But what the right thing to do is, rather than do that, is we need to learn to throw a really good backhanded cast. So I've got those fish coming at 2 o'clock at say 60 feet. I'm actually gonna take and I'm gonna turn my stance and I'm actually gonna look like this right here and I'm gonna throw it 180 this way so that I can send a nice clean backhanded shot out there at 2 o'clock very quickly without a lot of stress, without cack-handing like that. Cack-handing does not, it works with a 4 or 5 weight at 20 feet. It does not work with a 12 weight at 60 feet very well. So I can lay out a really good shot doing that. So anytime I hear 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, you know, fish coming, I'm already thinking like, hey, I'm actually gonna turn and I'm gonna do this. And it's harder than you think, you guys, to get that straight and tight. And I want you to make sure that you practice that a little bit. And it'll take me to my next casting exercise that I'll share with you. I've shared it 1,000 times, but people don't take it seriously, it seems like. Yeah, so I'll introduce that casting exercise, I think, at the end of the video. So this happens right here. I throw it out, and I'm either going to be in a two-handed strip, depending on what the guide's recommendation is. Like that, tarpon don't like a fly retrieved extremely fast. I've read a lot of blogs and tips from longtime tarpon guides, and they say one of the #1 mistakes that people make is once the tarpon sees the fly and begins to engage with it, they just get excited and strip too fast, or they stop stripping. Just keep it steady, just like so. If I'm two-handed stripping, you know, the hook setting, if I'm two-handed stripping, I've got a whole separate video on when and why to two-handed strip versus one-handed strip. But we're gonna do a pretty nice set, real firm, real solid. If you're fishing big tarpon, one of the best pieces of advice I've got from a Keys guide, or well, Everglades guide technically, was just let the fish do some of the work. They are so strong and their bodies are so strong, unlike a small baby tarpon, which you'll have to kind of quick jam to get it to set. These big tarpon, if we just resist on 1 or 2 head shakes, the pure strength of that fish is going to drive that hook home. So you don't have to do a big, you know, a big dramatic hook set. Just get a little possessive here, resist that fish, let them start to buck and move a little bit and begin to turn, and just make sure and keep that rod down until you've established a good fight. Chances are the first couple you hook, if you're anything, you know, have any success like me or the rest of us, it'll probably be a 5 to 15 second ordeal. It'll break your heart, then you'll wait again until the next trip to get that another opportunity at big fish. So be ready for the backhanded shot, be ready to one-handed strip or two-handed strip. Be in an athletic position, hands forward, a bunch of that's in my Tarpon 101 video. You can go check that out. Okay, more for casting exercises. The #1 thing that every saltwater guide I've ever talked to has said about getting prepared and being better is become a better caster. That's it. The tip. Like, they can tell you about hook setting, they can tell you about stripping, they can help you spot the fish. They can't cast the fly for you, okay? You have to get better at that. So the exercise that I like, and it's harder than you think, is gonna be just simply learning to do this. Let's step over here, and you're gonna take, say, 50, 60 feet of line, and we're gonna employ just a little double haul, nothing dramatic, and I'm gonna lay the fly line out in front of me, and then I'm gonna lay it out behind me, okay? Lay it out in front of me, lay it out behind me. And I'm looking to get those two perfectly straight in line with one another. And that's where I can work on my double haul too, because I've slowed things down. I can just give it a nice haul when I go forward, okay? And I'm gonna give it a nice haul when I go back, and I'm gonna really work on getting a good loop in my back cast. And if you can't do that by breaking it up slowly, you know, one cast, you know, forward cast, back cast, forward cast, back cast. If you can't execute that well, to think that you're going to be out there on a flats boat in the wind with it blowing sideways and having a weighted fly and excitement on a boat that might be moving a little bit, if you can't do it here, you can't do it there. Be very honest with yourself and work harder on getting better at that, because the fish don't care what kind of rod you have. They don't care how much money you spent or where you traveled from, who you are, or anything. It's the great equalizer. You're going to be on the front of that flats boat, and all those fish care about is eating and staying alive, okay? So practice this right here. Laser line in the front, laser line in the back, working that distance. Now, if you're working on becoming a better caster with heavy rods, practice, practice, practice. Keep your elbow very low and connected to your rod. Now, this exercise, here's what you're eventually going to progress to. You're going to touch down. Everything's going good. I can feel that double haul giving it a little bit of a turbo boost each time. It feels good. Now I'm ready to just touch down, touch down, touch down. And now I'm just going to pick my tempo up until I can throw in the air 60, 70, 80 feet or whatever it is. I can keep that line tight and stay connected to my fly the entire time. I think that's very worthy advice. If you're planning a big tarpon trip, there's a couple links in the video description. We've got flies, rods, leaders, all the tarpon gear you could possibly need, but the #1 thing that you need before you get there is a good strong cast.